If I could go back to that first morning in Lake Cowk, I'd tell myself to keep driving. But hindsight is a luxury the damned don't get. The first thing I noticed about Lake Cow wasn't the impossibly still water or the mountains that seemed to lean in like curious giants. It was the silence, not peaceful, quiet, complete unnatural silence that made my ears ring. No birds, no insects, no wind through the trees. Just the sound of our rental truck's engine cutting through air that felt too thick, too heavy. "Noah, look at this place." Hannah whispered from the passenger seat, her voice filled with wonder I hadn't heard in months. "It's like something from a postcard." She was right. The town spread before us in perfect concentric circles around a lake so black it looked like a hole punched through the earth. 47 houses, I'd later learn, each one immaculately maintained with white picket fences and flower gardens that bloomed impossibly bright despite the October chill. We pulled into the driveway of 23 Birch Lane, and before I'd even turned off the engine, they appeared. The first was an elderly woman with snow-white hair and piercing blue eyes. She emerged from the house next door with purposeful strides, followed by a man in his 40s whose smile looked too perfect to be real. Behind them came a nervous-looking woman in a white coat and a family of 4. "Welcome. Welcome." The elderly woman's voice carried further than it should have. "We've been expecting you." I set down the box I was carrying, something cold settling in my stomach. Expecting us. Word travels fast in small towns. The man with the perfect smile said, extending his hand, "Pastor Devine, and this is Margaret Thorne, our unofficial welcome committee." Within 15 minutes, 12 townspeople had materialized, each carrying cleaning supplies or covered dishes. They moved with an efficiency that suggested careful planning, assembling our furniture and organizing our belongings with perfect coordination. "This is incredible," Hannah laughed, watching 3 men work on our bed frame. In Seattle, we barely knew our neighbors' names. I watched Margaret direct everyone with subtle gestures and couldn't shake the feeling that they'd done this many times before. That evening, the entire town gathered in the community center for what Margaret called a proper welcome dinner. The hall buzzed with conversation as we entered, but the moment we appeared in the doorway, complete silence fell. 847 pairs of eyes turned toward us in perfect unison. We were seated at the head table like honored guests, every resident facing us in neat rows. The attention felt suffocating, but Hannah beamed beside me, clearly thrilled by the warm reception. "Friends." Margaret stood and addressed the room. "Tonight, we welcome Noah and Hannah to our community. As is our tradition, I'd like some of you to share your blessing stories." Tom Henderson, the father we'd met earlier, stood first. 5 years ago, I lost my job in Anchorage. Came here with my family, broke and desperate. His voice carried clearly through the silent hall. Within 1 week, I had 3 job offers, better pay than I'd ever made. The room murmured approval in perfect harmony. Hundreds of voices creating a single sound. Mrs. Chen, an elderly Asian woman, rose next. Terminal cancer diagnosis in Seattle. Doctors gave me 6 months. She paused, smiling serenely. Been in complete remission for 5 years now. Clean scans every time. More murmured approval. The same harmonic tone as before. A young couple in their 20s stood together. The Washingtons. The husband introduced them. Our marriage was falling apart when we arrived. Constant fighting, headed for divorce. His wife nodded, taking his hand. Now we're expecting our 3rd child. Happier than we've ever been. I noticed the pattern now. Each person stood at precisely the same moment, spoke for exactly the same duration, and sat down as the communal murmur reached the same pitch. It was like watching a choreographed performance. Dr. Rudda performance. Reeves stood next, her hands trembling slightly. "I lost my daughter in Seattle. Car accident," her voice cracked. "Came here broken, ready to end everything. This community saved my life, gave me purpose again." The murmur that followed was softer, more sympathetic, but still perfectly synchronized. An elderly man with kind eyes rose slowly. "Lost my wife of 47 years to Alzheimer's. Watched her forget my face, our children, everything we'd built together." He wiped his eyes. "Here, I found peace. The pain became manageable. More residents shared their stories. Financial ruin transformed into prosperity. Chronic illnesses cured overnight. Broken relationships healed completely. Each story followed the same pattern: desperation. Arrival in Lake Katuk. Miraculous transformation. How wonderful. Hannah whispered to me, tears in her eyes. It's like this place really does heal people. But I was watching the faces around us. Beneath their smiles, I saw something else. A desperate intensity, like they were trying to convince themselves as much as us. Their eyes never left our faces, gauging our reactions to every word. Pastor Devine stood last, his smile somehow brighter than all the rest. Lake Kayak takes care of its own, he said, his voice carrying an odd resonance. Always has, always will. Those who embrace our community find blessings beyond imagination. The entire room nodded as one, hundreds of heads moving in perfect synchronization. Of course, he continued, his smile flickering slightly. Not everyone appreciates what they've been given. Some people ask too many questions, poke around where they shouldn't. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Several residents shifted uncomfortably. What happened to them? I asked before I could stop myself. Pastor Devine's smile returned, but his eyes remained cold. They usually realize it's best to move on, find somewhere more suitable to their temperament. Margaret stood quickly, breaking the tension. Before we conclude, I want to share our most important community guideline with Noah and Hannah. She turned to us, her expression serious. We have one simple rule here in Lake Katuk. We respect each other's quiet hours. Never answer your door after 10. 0. The entire room went perfectly still. Not just quiet, frozen, as if everyone had stopped breathing simultaneously. That's specific, I said, my voice unnaturally loud in the silence. Wildlife, Dr. Reeves said quickly. Too quickly. Bears mostly. They wander through town at night. But I noticed several residents unconsciously touch wooden crosses or other protective items hanging from their necks. A few children stared at us with wide, frightened eyes until their parents pulled them close. It's for everyone's safety, Margaret continued, her gaze never leaving mine. The rule has served us well for many years. Those who follow it prosper, those who don't. She didn't finish the sentence, but the implied threat hung in the air like smoke. Of course, Hannah said brightly, oblivious to the tension. We wouldn't want to disturb anyone. The collective sigh of relief was audible. Hundreds of people exhaling together in perfect harmony. Walking home under a moonless sky, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched from every darkened window. They're wonderful people, Hannah said, linking her arm through mine. Did you see how everyone looked so healthy and happy? When's the last time you saw a community that genuinely cared about each other? Back home, I set up my work equipment while Hannah unpacked. Everything connected perfectly. Internet speed impossible for rural Alaska. Devices linking automatically to networks that hadn't existed before. My laptop ran faster than ever, as if optimized by the town itself. This is amazing, I called to Hannah. Better connection than downtown Seattle. Everything here is better, she replied. And there was something in her voice, a contentment so complete, it sounded unnatural. She was asleep within minutes, breathing deeply for the first time in months. I lay awake, listening to the impossible silence outside, checking the security monitors I'd installed. At 11:15 p.m., scrolling through the footage, I paused. In one frame, just for a moment, there was a shadow near the treeing that didn't belong. Tall, impossibly tall, with proportions that hurt to look at. I rewound the footage, but the shadow was gone. No gaps in the timestamp, no missing seconds, as if it had never existed. I told myself it was fatigue, my mind playing tricks. But I spent the rest of the night watching those monitors, wondering what the Kowalskis had really been running from, and why a simple rule about not answering doors after 10:0 required such desperate emphasis. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered that I should have kept driving. The next 3 weeks in Lake Kayak were the best of our lives. That should have been my first warning. By the end of our second day, I'd landed 3 new clients, each offering contracts worth more than I'd made in the previous 6 months combined. The first call came at 7:00 a.m. Sharp, a tech startup in Portland, desperate for my consulting services. The second arrived before I'd finished my morning coffee. A Fortune 500 company somehow finding my contact information despite my website being down for maintenance. The third appeared in my inbox with a subject line that made me do a double take. Dream project. Name your price. This is incredible, I told Hannah, showing her the contract figures on my laptop screen. It's like every business decision I've ever wanted to make is suddenly falling into place. Hannah looked healthier each morning, her chronic migraines completely gone, her energy levels higher than I'd seen in years. She joined the women's book club, started attending morning yoga sessions with Margaret, and somehow convinced Mrs. Chen to teach her traditional Chinese cooking. Our relationship, strained by Mon,